Hey everybody, Jonathan from Nornware here, and you're gonna see me do some actual Space Piece development. Space Piece Terrafright development. Yes, I'm actually going to do one of my tasks that I've been triaging forevers. Off camera, I've gone through and sort of categorized them a little bit, you know, bugs, things that would be nice to have, things that need to be tested, and such and such. Most of the stuff that's been triaged is like nice to have, so that's going to be really interesting to see how that rolls. But I'm gonna start. You know, I'm gonna try to get warmed up. It's been a while since I worked on Space Piece Terrafright, which is horrible, but I'm feeling pumped. I like this public aspect of doing it. You know, pulling my pants down even further, doing live development. Awesome. I picked one here that I sort of cheated. I sort of worked on it and found that it might be interesting for you to watch. So I reverted it, and let's do it again. Basically, this is sort of nice / tech. I was noticing in the code since I did the what I call the membrane renderer, which is the blue, you know, like in the menus now you're flying through this this sort of empty world, and that's a very special sort of edge rendering sort of stylized thing that I developed. But what I realized was that that's really just that's a subset of my concept of a renderer in the game, and background there is. Basically, there is the VPBR renderer, which is the virtual, vaguely physically based rendering renderer that I have, which is the main thing that you see. But there's also a separate renderer with a whole other set of shaders when you use infravision, because that's very, very different. And that is, I'm almost embarrassed to say, actually like C++ style polymorphism, which I really tend to rant about that I don't use. But in this case, it's one of those situations where I think it's a good use of that kind of thing. It's just an interface, and it's one of those rich hickey isms. I really mean it, right? So what am I going to do? I realized that the world, the empty world, the what I call the dead world, or the wanderer thing, where there's just a camera going through the world in the menus, it doesn't need everything that a full renderer has. So it doesn't do like characters. It doesn't do gibs or particles. It does a subset. So what I realized, it would be interesting to see if I could refine the abstraction a little bit and have like a miniature renderer for that stuff, and then a full renderer which extends it, right? So I'm going to do that for you now. No timer on this, but I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible. So right now, by this point, PBTF is the current incarnation. There are 4 of them now living side by side in the codebase for reasons. But I'm going to look for the renderer. It's here somewhere, renderer. Yeah, and this is the current. Don't know why the colors are messed up there, but this is the current abstraction. So there's a renderer, and the thing is that I want to extract a subset. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to say there is a mini renderer. So this is interface. As you can see, it's a pure virtual interface, or pure virtual class struct, whatever it's called in whatever language. But it's just an interface. It doesn't have any state. It's just a function table, and that's what I need here. And I'm going to do some typical compiler-driven sort of refactoring. I'm going to break it, and then the compiler will tell me how to fix it, or what I need to fix. So the concept, there's a mini renderer. And should it be called a maxi renderer, full renderer, mini renderer, subset renderer? I don't know. Let's do this. Mini and full. Or small and big, mini. Let's go mini and full. Let's do that. And there's probably some forward declarations of VC renderer I. By the way, that's my style. If it's an interface, it ends with I instead of T. That's just a thing I do. Yep, let's see. So if I remove all of the forward declarations, then the compiler will break. Well, it will tell me that things are wrong. And that's a good technique, because then there's not the concept of a type floating around, which might confuse me in my coding. It's like you have to commit to the new names of the interfaces. And obviously everything is really, really broken here. Yeah. So we'll go through. So I'm guessing at this time that additive dynamic mesh, I think that stuff is additive dynamic mesh. That is lasers, fences, that kind of thing. That's certainly a full renderer feature. That's in the game, in the mission, not in the intro part. And what is this? Soil, that's the concept of blood and guts that's on the floor. That's also only in the full, in the mission. Let's see, what is this? Render HUD weapon, that's also in the full renderer, or in the mission. Should it be called mission renderer? No, let's call it a full render because it's used. I'm confused. Because it's like a cooking show. I did this ahead of time. I know that the infestation is actually rendered as part of the intro scene or the menu scene, so that will go for the subset. It will use the subset interface. Bold scores, bullet marks, basically that is certainly full renderer. Yep. This is where I need to reintroduce my forward declarations. As you can see, I'm compiling a lot. Yeah, Jibs is also one of those things. That's what I tend to do. I've probably talked about this before. It's like I'll fix one error and then I'll recompile, because it does tend to be a lot of dependent errors. And here's the thing: mission, common, world, batch. That is what iterates through the world and gives the renderer whatever renderer is going on. It could be any one of the three renderers: the membrane one, or the blue front end one, the main one from in mission, and the InfraVision one. That's why the abstraction is here, among other reasons, is that the world is a complex thing, and you need to go through it and do culling and all that kind of stuff, and say, okay, here's a door, render this, and it's abstracted so the renderer knows how to do that. In this case, there's a lot of batching going on, but that's completely the purview of the renderer. It might be the case that we could get rid of the abstraction later if it turns out that the batches are similar, but that's a separate thing. And here's the thing, yeah, the membrane renderer, which is the thing that uses that is used in the front end. It doesn't. Some of these implementations are empty. I can exemplify that, like these. Like this is where, in my opinion, one of the reasons why object orientation falls through, because I'm running at warnings as errors and warning level 4, and if you don't explicitly, this might be weird code to you, but if you don't explicitly reference all the arguments, then you'll get a compiler error. You can also remove the actual name of them and it will work. But the point is, this is an instance of a case where I'm doing an inheritance, I'm doing polymorphism, but it's not really the case conceptually that the membrane renderer is a renderer, because it's only a subset, and that's why I'm doing this refactoring and splitting up the concepts of the renderers into a full and mini. I believe this is mini because this is like the moisture drips, also the mist, I believe. Let's look at that. Mist, alpha particles, yeah, and that needs to be rendered in the intro scene as well. Cannot convert. And why not? Is it because did I not? I did. Cannot convert from membrane render to mini render. Is that because I just have to include? No, it's included. Like what is why? This is confusing me. Is it one of those? You have to include the vendor alpha. Yeah, seems like I changed things around a bit. Or maybe I'm just totally missing something. Oh, that was not the thing. Well, let's figure this out. I don't think we need to include that mini renderer I, which is a renderer, right? That's what it's called. Oh, mini renderer T. Made myself a way day. Yeah, like not talking and not thinking. The member renderer is a mini renderer. It's not a full renderer, and that's where I was expecting this to happen. Now things are working. So we're going to reintroduce those later. And here you see, okay, this is one of the instances. This is the dead world code, I think. Yes. So it's rendering the world from the wanderer. That's I call it the wanderer that's moving around. Renderer on the stack, because that's how they work. And then it puts batches in the renderer, and then it renders later, right? That's the thing. I want it to depend on the interface, the mini renderer interface. So some of these things are going to move, and it wants batch world space. So that gets to move to there. And yep, you can't. So batch world space is one we want to keep. And let's do this in another way. Let's do batch world space. Batch infestation, we have to say it's part of this interface. Also, this is what's going to happen, VC mini renderer I. So the concept is the full renderer is a superset of the mini renderer. Render infestation, or was it batch infestation? Due to following members, batch infestation, yes. And render batches goes from there to there. And it needs to know about that. So what I'm hoping will fall out of this is that you'll see that the actual interface that is required to render the dead world, or the first one, is a subset. Case of entities, it's things like breaches, sentries, beasts. Those are full renderer, in the purview of the full renderer. Additive Dynamesh, that's also full renderer stuff, I believe. We'll see if I get this wrong. Batch heroes, yes, full renderer. And scientists. Forward declaration. The VPBR is a full renderer. Batch heroes, yeah, that was implementation. Yeah, VC render infestation batch. That is mini renderer. Part of, because I want that in the or I use that in the intro scene. Infravision is totally a full renderer. Yeah, forward declaration. Render HUD weapon is full renderer. Great. Now we can just basically remove all of this stuff and introduce it later when we get link errors. So what is this? Batch entities, full render. That doesn't imply that there's a hierarchy there. It's just a word that covers anything that is like a singular mesh that is rendered in a single draw call. World text is main scene inner. Yeah, that's all full render stuff. Render gibs. That is full render batches object. Where are we now? We're in the... Yes, this is the code that is calling... This is drawing the world, batching the world. All mini stuff, because the intro scene uses this. Batch object space. I think it needs both of those. And yes. Look at all this vestigial old camel case stuff. Go away. Batch door apparently required as well. And it says cannot instantiate. Renderer. Render mist, yes. Render mist. Let's keep these comments here. Render mist. Render mist. Render smoke. What is this? Yeah, that's a little bit irritating because smoke is alpha blended. It needs to be sorted. And, you know, part of this whole, you know, draw the mist, draw the alpha particles. But, you know, actually there is no smoke going on in the intro scene. So that's like, that would be nice if that, you know, didn't need to be there. But that's the thing. Look at this. Actually, it shouldn't be called render smoke. That's yeah. Look at this. What's it doing? It's going through drips and vapor. So drips are, you know, moisture coming from the ceiling, and blood also. Vapor is smoke. All, you know. And what does it do? It culls and collects them. It culls and collects all the vapors, all those, and then they get sorted into the same array or the same slush lane, and then they get rendered. And then we build the meshes, actual meshes, into the same mesh, and then it gets rendered. So render smoke, it should be called render sort, render alpha. Yeah, that's what it should be called instead. As in alpha blending. So render smoke is now, this is all dynamic geometry, and it's only this one, alpha. And yeah, that's a good name change. Needs to do render alpha. Yep, and all those need to change. You might also notice the use of the horrible magenta color for member functions. That's on purpose, because I want to shun the use of that stuff if I can. Soil is full renderer. World text is full renderer. And does it compile? The library appears to compile. but yeah, so a bunch of, excuse me, a bunch of linker errors. And where are we now? We're in the dev project. So this is development stuff that you have never seen. It might be fun for you to see some of that stuff moving forward here. A bunch of tools that the way that I work is that I do generally I have a split of deployments. I have a public deployment, which is the one that you guys play, the one that you buy. The commercial product, it's the public version, and it's a subset of the dev version, or the dev is a superset of pub. So dev has a bunch of extra editors on top. So model viewers and world browsers and such. So that's how that works. Bunch of link errors. And it appears to be in the membrane renderer. Right. And what's it? Batch infestation is one. Both of batch world space, batch object. Okay, I'm just being confused. Mission common world batch. Yeah, got it wrong there. It's supposed to be a mini renderer. So what I'm doing is I'm generally compiling in the order I compile. If I'm in a CPP, I'll compile that, Control F7, then I'll compile the whole library, Shift F7, and then F7 for the entire solution. So sort of inside out compilation. Render batches on the membrane renderer. And batch object space, both of those, I believe. Door. And this is sort of a two-stage process, especially in the case of the I don't know if this is necessary, but what it does when the world is running, it won't render directly, but it will queue work, a batch that gets rendered later, and it's the purview of the renderer in what order those batches are rendered. Yeah. So for example, the membrane renderer has only has one type of batch, whereas the VPBR, where is it? VPBR renderer has lots of different kinds. It does the skybox is one shader, static stuff, depending on a bunch of material properties. Legacy shader that has no normal maps, legacy with normal maps, legacy with emit and normal maps, VPBR and emit, all that kind of stuff. There are skin stuff, which is the sentries. There's blend mesh, which is all the organic, like the humans and the space beasts and the astro creeps. So, and that is very specific to the way that the renderer works. So that's why the batching is it's the responsibility of the renderer. And look at this. This is specific interface. Look at that. I want these to be free functions. I just do. Because that's my style. And then what you throw in there is a const VPBR. Like that's renderer. Step one of going from member function to free function. And is that actual? No, I'm an idiot. Sorry. That's abstracted because, or is it? Wait a second. Maybe you shouldn't do more than one refactoring at the same time. This renderer, do I know? Yes, I know that it is. HUD helmet is always that one. Yeah, that's why those were specific member functions and not part of the render abstraction, because when they're called, it's always that renderer, the VPBR render here on the stack. Yeah. So this means VPBR renderer render HUD helmet. Yeah, it collapses that way. VPBR renderer render HUD visor, because that stuff never gets rendered as infravision, because it's conceptually, you're inside your helmet, you see that, and then everything that's outside the helmet needs to be abstracted. And look at that. That's amazing. It doesn't even need the renderer. So that means it's not... There you go, object orientation, man. So that stuff, you could argue. It does use some file local stuff, so I'm going to keep it in this module. But you could argue that it should be somewhere, could be in the calling context. It could be here where it's called. That's kind of interesting to me. Let's see how it works. I'm just gonna call it that, because it's not the renderer, it's just the VPBR. It uses the VPBR whatchamacallums, shaders. The render is just a stack construct for batching, and that doesn't get batched solid. Render immediately. Yep, I believe. Render single, yeah, it renders, sets up the effect and goes, yeah, that's what it is. So there's been some confusion going on with like what is a renderer and how much is batching and how much is not. Render advisor, yeah, so it doesn't need the renderer. And wow, that's so amazing. That means that this isn't even used. Oh, that's so awesome. Talk about flattening stuff. Yeah, because the renderer is just an abstraction over the idea of batching stuff. And in this case, it's not batched, it's just rendered straight up using the effects. Yeah, render mist. Renderer. Render mist. Render alpha. Render smoke, it was what it was called. But now we're just going to go for a... And I do a sort of a split conceptually when I'm rendering. Some stuff is called, I call it hard meshes, and that is generally vertex index buffers that are on the GPU. So they're optimal in that way. They're not instanced in this case, but it's a mesh that's preloaded on the GPU. That's one use case. Very many things like things that are traditionally modeled 3D things, parts of the world, all that kind of stuff is a hard mesh. Then there are things like, in this case, the alpha is generated on the fly, particle systems and things like that, where the mesh is actually built on the CPU and is dynamic in that way. Yeah, so render soft mesh as opposed to a hard mesh, right? Which is there. That's just details of DirectX 9. So yeah, it went through. Dev build of the game, and that looks like it works. I'm seeing the mist. I'm seeing the I'm seeing the drips. I'm seeing the world. Cool. And I'm just going to launch a mission real quick. And I'm seeing the VPBR. A little bit of a frame drop. I'm capturing OBS now, so yeah. This is dev stuff that you don't have, but I have, where I can, I can turn on max upgrades for the character, and so now I have everything. And apparently the infravision works, and the normal renderer works with a mix of material types. So I would say refactoring works. Yeah, I'm going to cut it there.